I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. Today we're on the AXFX 3. I have the Plexi 50 watt 6CA7 model dialed up. I've got one of my own cab impulses and I have a bit of the London plate reverb. And I want to show you how we can take this amp model and essentially hot rod it to create our own custom amp model in here. First, let's just hear this amp model at stock settings with the cab and the reverb. This is a really great, mean sounding Marshall style amp in here. I'm going to leave the authentic controls alone because I actually don't mind that too much. And I'll walk you through a few virtual mods we can do. One of the most popular modifications on old non-master volume Plexi style amps is the so-called Jose mod, and we can do that in here if we just navigate to the preamp tab. We're going to use the saturation switch here. There are two controls, one which engages the saturation switch either in an authentic mode or in the ideal mode. Basically, the real modification would decrease the overall output volume of your amp. So let's use the ideal mode. Why not? I've got the saturation drive set at 4. We'll play with it a little bit, but this instantly gives you that sticky 80s style brown sound thing out of this model. So we'll hear it without and then with. Sounds awesome, right? It really does have extra hair on there. If you want a kind of subtle effect, I would bring it kind of no lower than about 2. Really fun, and if you want it to get super duper hairy, for me, I don't normally bring it up any higher than like 7 or 8. Let's just try 7. I find with 2, it just kind of leaves the main tone intact. It changes the feel a little bit, but here you're really going to hear a whole lot more extra kind of drive and grind. That is nasty. I reckon for this particular model, I'm just going to bring it down a little bit to around 5, so we get this. Still got some definition there, but it's still really nice and hairy and squishy. Alrighty, that is probably my favorite little modification in the preamp tab. Playing around with the low cut frequency is another great one you can do here, or you can use the input EQ. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to add a little bit of low cut before the amp. So it's just going to tighten up the low end a little bit. I think around 80 Hertz works pretty good with this particular amp model, but you can bring this up as high as like 400 or 500 Hertz if you've got a really low heavy amp, like say a rectifier. So let's hear the difference there with some low end chugga chugga stuff. To my ears, around 100 Hertz strikes the right balance between tightening up the low end and not having all the kind of character and oomph ripped out. You can also use this built-in peaking EQ type to add a strong mid boost. Again, this is another like late 70s, early 80s trick. Frequency at about 1000 hertz, or exactly 1000 hertz right here. And what we'll do is let's add 9 dB of gain to 1000 hertz. This is really going to make this scream. That's pretty awesome right there. I have brought the Q down so that it's a bit of a wider boost as well as the gain. That low cut and that mid boost there is such a great alternative to using an extra drive pedal or anything like that. So input EQ is fantastic. The saturation switch for the virtual Jose mod is pretty awesome. Another one I like is in the power amp, especially with these models that in the real world don't have a master volume, is to go to the power amp and to set the master volume location to post phase inverter. Let's go to the ideal tab now because the master volume is still at 10. Doing that change with the master volume at 10 isn't going to really change anything. But if you bring it down, I always find the sweet spot is about 7 or 8 with these amps. I'll bring it down. I'll just compensate by bringing the level up a little bit. It's actually going to change the character of the amp, and this almost pushes this from kind of plexi territory to like early 2203 territory or something like that. That is so chunky, and just through my studio monitors, I'm getting so much oomph out of it. I love that. So we've got the post phase inverter master volume, we've got the saturation, we've got the input EQ. The next couple of tips aren't really mods. These are things that I would do to just about every amp model in here. I'd visit the speaker tab and I would experiment with the speaker impedance curve and the speaker compression. I like to bump speaker compression to about 3, which again is just going to change the feel a little bit. I like compression. There's very little gain reduction there, but that is definitely a great feel control. Playing around with different impedance curves I've talked about before, but I would have to say probably my favorite in here for high gain is this 4x12 5153. Let's hear that. So tight in the low end. If you want the opposite, if you want a big booming low end, try the 4x12 Recto Straight. This one crushes. Either of those two are my go-tos for high gain stuff. Let's just roll with this one right here. All right. Now for some real fun, for some kind of old school Marshall trickery. We have a Variac modeled in here. So I like setting the Variac to about 75%. Again, just going for more of that kind of browned out thing. Turn the level up again. I'll bring it up to 0 dB in this case. Let's hear it, Variac. That one's amazing. And bring the supply sag up. Don't be afraid to crank the supply sag up to like 7 or 8. Let's hear that now with the Variac. I should mention as well, you don't have to do all of these mods together. I'm just kind of stacking them one on top of the other. You could take any one of these and just kind of change up your tone a little bit, but I'm leaning right into all of this. Another great one in the power amp is the transformer drive. I find just doubling the stock value is something which, again, changes up the feel nicely. All right, this is kind of the opposite of what I would normally recommend, you know, just tweak the authentic controls. Here we've left the authentic controls the same and we're tweaking all the advanced stuff. I guess the last kind of tweak I like, or so-called modification, would be to go to the preamp tab and you can swap out tone stacks in here. For example, if I want to take this Plexi, but I don't know, let's maybe take the Brit 800 tone stack or do something totally different. I don't know if this is going to sound good at all. Maybe let's put a Soldano tone stack in there. So let's put Solo 100. This might sound terrible. I haven't tried this, but we get this. Brit 800 sounds pretty good to my ears. We can play around with the tone stack frequency. Another popular mod for Marshall style amps, like if you were using a Strat, would be to either disengage the bright switch or bring the bright cap value down. For example, if we bring that down by a factor of 10. Kind of fun as well, but I think saturation switch, the post-phase inverter master volume, the input EQ, Variac and supply sag, transformer drive. There's so much stuff you can do here. You know, you could really create some interesting chimeras between different amp types. You could play around with the tone stack location, the tone stack frequency. As I said, you don't have to do any of this stuff. You can just kind of use maybe one or two of these tricks and use the one which has the biggest impact on your tone, or you can really get granular with the Axe-Fx 3 and the FM3 and kind of create something that doesn't already exist in the box. So there's some of my favorite kind of virtual modifications for Marshall style amps anyway. I would love to hear from you all. Do you do any of these particular advanced parameter tweaks? If you have a go-to, please share them in the comments so that we can all have a crack at them. And if you liked this video, let me know in the comments. If you have any suggestions for future videos or questions about any of the Tuesday tone tips, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, have a great week. I'll see you all next Tuesday for another tone tip. Cheers.